We just heard Storm I Ride from Between Two Worlds from the record by the interestingly named band from the
Occulta brothers.
Yeah, the Doom Occulta brothers. And this is the Recommended Podcast. It's Mark.
And I'm Jason. And we struggled with what to call this episode, but I think for indie rock fans to call it the Occulta brothers kind of has like...
Yeah. Well, it's Demonaz, Doom Occulta, and Abath, Doom Occulta.
Yeah.
From Immortal fame. And basically we're going to be talking about their side project / I don't know, it's almost like their own genre, really.
Mm-hmm. It's like Bathory Motorhead.
Yeah, between the Demonaz, eponymous band, which actually, if you go back, I remember listening to some of his stuff on MySpace years ago.
Well, he put out like demos in like 2007 or something like that.
He did some stuff before that. Like after he left Immortal, it was more kind of some gothy, almost industrial kind of electronic bullshit. But but now these two records, I think, the Between Two Worlds and March of the Norse that came out. March of the Norse came out 2011, and Between Two Worlds is 2006. After Immortal broke up, and everybody was, I think, really at least I was really jonesing to have some kind of a Bath-ish isms in my music. But these two records are almost companion pieces, I think, to some degree, to Immortal. And
I was saying that like they, in a weird way, Between Two Worlds from which, Storm I Ride, you just heard, like, really fit well after kind of Sons of Northern Darkness. It just sort of was like kind of a nice companion piece to that, even though that record was 2002, so it's, 4 year. But as far as like their kind of like riffing vocabulary, I think was very much informed by that record, because at that point they got away from the machine gun drums and the super fast riffing, and they're almost coming up with their own their own identity outside of just that hyper blast shit. Yeah, it was like a mid-pace sort of melodic riffing that was super catchy and bringing some palm muting back into the stuff, and really the whole, and actually through all these projects the one kind of like guiding force is Demonaz's lyrics, which have always been, you see him interview and he seems like kind of a meathead and like he doesn't really have much to say, but he's got a really good voice with his lyrics. Like there's always this like, the Blashyrkh mythos, evocative imagery of nature, and like he'd never seen, like nothing ever comes across as being like a bad lyric. Like he doesn't have some kind of idea behind it. And these two guys it seems like they've been connected at the hip forever, even though after, Demonaz left Immortal because of his issues with tendonitis, he couldn't play because he played wrong. For so long. All those years. And if you're interested in how Immortal or any of these guys play, go to YouTube and check out Ben Ash's video. Yeah. He's a good friend of ours and friend of the podcast. Where he basically goes through the first kind of era, the Demonaz era of Immortal, how to play those riffs, some of the fundamentals, and also how to not get tendonitis. Does he show you how Demonaz played the wrong way? Does he sort of demonstrate this is kind of what he's playing it the right, like he's playing it the right way, but he's showing how like the riffing patterns and like the jazz sensibilities and a lot of those kind of things as well. But Demonaz was playing more with his wrist, where he's just, you can't play prolonged that way for that long without really having some serious damage. Anything repetitive, and that's always been like one of the weird aspects of like the Immortal kind of sound that maybe it's less pronounced maybe on these records than some of the Immortal stuff is I guess I don't know if I'd call it the improvisational way that they do it, but like Abath has such a like left of center approach to like how he plays guitar, how he even like approaches like black metal songwriting, and it's just different than any other band. And a lot of it probably after Blizzard Beast, that was kind of the last real hyperspeed record. I think that might have been the last record with Demonaz on it, if I remember right. Because he wasn't At the Heart of Winter. Yeah. So like it almost seems like Abath's songwriting sensibilities came out of, well, Demonaz can't play that way anymore, so how can I still get in that kind of, the dissonance, some of the fast stuff, but then it always changed, like it always alternated between that and some kind of some slower riffing or like some chugging kind of riff that, at least to my ear, that it always came out of, okay, this is why Abath is writing this way. And it's kind of seemed to go on and kind of like permutate from that ever since that era. But and Abath is doing the primary songwriting on the record, Between Two Worlds, and then Demonaz is doing the primary songwriting musically on March of the Norse. But Demonaz is writing lyrics for both records as well.
Yep. He's always been the kind of esthetician. That's not even a word, I don't think. But he's always had the kind of lyrical aesthetic, and even his lyrics have always kind of, I think, fed into the visual aesthetic of Immortal and kind of the ethic of what Immortal really is. Because Immortal, sometimes they fall into the black metal, kind of banner, but you're hard pressed, except for diabolical full moon mysticism, to actually go back and hear anything about Satan or unholy anything.
Yeah,
it's all their own mythos. It's all this, almost like worshiping the glaciers in the north and the expansive fjords and all this kind of shit. It's like their own thing. Like it's almost as weird as like what Bathory was doing back in the 80s.
Yeah,
like nobody really talked about Viking shit.
Well, I was going to say
nationality, where it's not a
Hammerheart,
racist thing,
different things like that. Twilight of the Gods, and why can't I think of the record before Hammerheart? Bloodfire Death. You know, like from that point on, like there was, definitely like a evocative imagery, and like certainly things like March of the Norse, which is talking so much about. There is an anthemic Viking kind of battle quality to it, but I think there's also a battle quality to Between Two Worlds. And there's some people have joked that the title Between Two Worlds is almost like an allusion to like the fact that it's like halfway in between like Bathory and Immortal, like this like sound of like merging them together. Or someone said, where did I read? Someone said it should be called Between Three Worlds, so you can throw Motorhead in there because it's like a little dose of Motorhead, which I think you hear mostly the Motorhead influence, I think, on Storm I Ride, which is a song we just heard. That's probably, to me, the most Motorhead-ish.
Yeah, I don't... The thing that... When I
think people think of it, too, the way he sings. It has a Lemmy-esque quality to it, the Popeye kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he's got... Actually, both these guys at this point, but I think it was all informed by Bath's vocals, that they have very singular vocals. Like... A Bath's vocals are unmistakably a Bath's, and same with Lemmy. Nobody really sings like them. Now the dude from Inquisition has a little bit of, unabashed, kind of a Bath-isms to his vocals, even though he says he's just conjuring demons or whatever. But that's definitely definitely his own aesthetic, and that's another thing. Like goes back to his. If you ever heard an interview with a Bath. He has a mild speech impediment as well. He has like a mild lisp, almost like his tongue's too big for his mouth. And and I'm not trying to say this in any kind of disparaging way at all, but I think that leads to how his vocals are. Yeah. Because even like some of my favorite videos to watch on YouTube are the Bath guitar lessons, which he did for, what is it, like Guitar World or something?
Yeah, I remember those.
There's like 6 of them or something, and he does not. He's not a great teacher, which he says many times. But when, like most people, I've never seen this done before, where somebody's playing unmiked, is playing guitar, and they're a vocalist, and guitar player for the band, death metal band as well, and he just like instantly like goes right into it, like singing no problem, unmiked. Yeah, and it's just fucking amazing to me. It's like that's his natural vocal pattern, and he. Kind of came into that, and this is what I do.
That's his voice.
That's his voice. Yeah. It's his creative voice, but I don't know where I was just a tangent, but
because we were talking about the vocal style, and stuff. But I think when this I record came out, for some people, I don't know if they were expecting Immortal Part 2 or something. I was kind of like pleasantly surprised that it wasn't just another Immortal record, that it had these...
It has its own identity for sure.
Triumphant, melodicisms to it. I mean, Icedale, who we definitely need to sort of start talking about here.
Hervé Isdale, I think is his real name, or something close to that.
What he brings, coming out of the enslaved camp is, and you're going to hear it in the next song that we hear, Battalions, where I think that song in particular is like this really nice blending of the sort of strange black metal-ish worlds of Enslaved and Immortal, who neither are traditionally black metal. Both
they're completely outside.
Have roots become their own Viking-esque culture. The Norse mythology of it more so than the satanic qualities of black.
There's something distinctly like Norwegian about both these bands that I don't think they could have gotten that sound from. Like if you grew up in Arkansas, that's not the sound you would lean toward or something. Like there's just a. And I don't know if it's just listening to this stuff for so many years that the Viking isms, it makes me think of Bathory or Amon Amarth or whoever, or Unleashed or whatever it might
Battalions, to me, it sounds like a very Amon Amarth-esque, the song, just because of anthemic, like go to battle thing, and Bathory captured that really well, like on Bloodfire Death and
for sure,
Hammerheart and stuff.
And this is actually an album at this point. A friend of mine's friend from San Francisco who's really into, grew up on punk rock, but then started getting more and more into metal stuff. Bought this record on a whim and basically worshipped it. He's like, this is the best record I've ever heard before. Not really knowing that, this is the dude from Immortal.
Yeah.
There's just something about this. It's really honest.
Yeah.
I don't think it takes itself overly serious. I mean, especially look at the photos inside
imagery,
there.
Yeah.
Abath's, doing he's kind of, hamming it up Gene Simmons thing in it as well. But yeah, there's just something I think it came out at the right time. For me, I was missing Immortal really bad at this point.
Yeah.
And this thing came out and I fucking grabbed it on.
Well, I think it's a great metal record. It's not anything else besides that. It has moments, you could argue, that have black metal-esque kind of things, as moments that could be more power metal-esque, as some speed metal moments, as some doomier, gloomier kind of moments on it. But ultimately, it stands like on its own in a way that a Dio record would stand on its own from 83, 84. It's just metal. It just encapsulates metal. Whatever that means to you, might be your definition of metal might be different than mine.
It's got a lot of Manowar in it too.
But yeah, there's some of that too. That's the power metal aspect I would kind of throw in there. I mean, to me, it has a lot of German speed metal stuff. There's moments of Blind Guardian that you hear on Curse We Are. Just the speediness of it and the propulsion of it. Iron Maiden is definitely part of it. Bathory's part of it for sure. Motorhead's part of it. There's even the song we wanted to play but really didn't have time, Days of the North Winds, has kind of a Paradise Lost, Catatonia-esque harmonic moment to it that's doomy,
little dissonant
sort of thing going on. There's bluesiness to it, Sabbathisms, especially some of the solos and Far Beyond the Quiet, have this soulful quality to them, and that's something you don't hear traditionally in Immortal or in black metal, is the bluesy, soulful qualities. I mean, because of the way that Abath just kind of had the Immortal way of playing guitar, and bringing in a guy like Icedale who's playing maybe more traditionally, I guess. I mean,
Icedale reminds me he almost reminds me of somebody that would have been in the Norwegian version of Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. He's got a Slash quality to him or something.
He cannot wear a shirt. The shirt does not fit him. He works better without a shirt in general.
Yeah.
But he's just a great fucking guitar player.
Yep.
And we should mention who the band is. I mean, we've mentioned that Abath is on vocals.
Yep.
And then we've got T.C. King, also known as King of Hell. Who's another Audrey Horne / Gorgoroth. Audrey Horne is a band I think we should do a show on, even though I've never really heard them, but there's so many people that have been in Audrey Horne that are in, especially in Enslaved. And I think maybe even The Haunted, a couple. They've been I always see that name on Metal Archives.
They're sort of connected to people.
Audrey Horne or whatever. But yeah, and on bass, who's probably best known from Gorgoroth, Armageddon, the original Immortal drummer on drums. Then Icedale and Abath.
And Abath doesn't play any guitar on this record? It's just
he's rhythm guitar.
Oh, okay, he's rhythm.
Yeah,
okay.
Icedale's lead.
Yeah. And that's, again,
and Abath wrote all the music.
Such a different quality to it,
Yeah.
And I'm sure he gave Icedale a little bit of wiggle room to improvise some of the solos, because
I'm sure
a lot of them sound pretty soulful, they're not controlled,
Yeah.
Which is good. And so, but a song like Storm I Ride kind of gets things sort of moving. I mean, what would you say is to you the defining quality of the I song,
I mean, really, the propulsive drums, it's almost like Mickey D of Motorhead.
Yeah.
Kind of speed, that doop constant double bass.
Well, the way that Mickey D played on, the King Diamond.
And Abigail.
Yeah, where it's just propulsion, just sort of moves. And that's a record where...
And he's not a flashy drummer. He's a solid, speedy drummer. And just seeing him play with Motorhead last year, he did about it was a 5 or 6 minute drum solo that wasn't the masturbatory drum solos that you typically see, where he had a 5-gallon bucket of drumsticks next to him, and he was flying. It was like a circus act, fucking flying drumsticks up in the air and just cascading around behind him. But this guy's pushing I mean, he's in his mid-50s.
Yeah.
And playing like an hour and 20-minute show of just this constant fucking fast-ass double bass. But that's, as far as the speed of it and the kind of propulsive motion of it, totally goes back to Ace of Spades Motorhead.
Yeah.
But then you've got, I don't even know where that guitar sound is. It's just, Abbas got such a weird way of writing music.
Yeah.
It's not overly complicated, but it's just weird choices that he makes. Like the riff when he first start off is, I don't even really, it's like a little bit of Bathory, a little bit of Venom, maybe a little bit of Celtic Frost, not even really. It's more new wave of British heavy metal.
I was going to say, it's cleaner, you know.
And then his vocals come in and you're like, okay, this is something a little bit different. And they also do, which you mentioned last episode, the call out, where he calls out Icedale right before he does his solo, which is, I always love.
And this is a record, I mean, I can't, you mentioned one of your friends who wasn't really into metal so much kind of globbing onto this. This is a record that you threw out to a lot of different people of walks of life and they could kind of glob onto it.
Yeah.
I guess it just depends if you can kind of look past the vocals on some level. Like, and again, people like you and I don't look past them, but get used to them, I guess, for the non-metal listeners. Once you can, like, it's just,
that's really the only thing.
Record.
The really only thing to get past if you're not used to extreme metal is, and even if you are used to extreme metal, I know people that don't like Inquisition, they don't like Immortal purely because of the vocals. Yeah, which I see it as more of like, this is a really unique feature that I really like about the band. But there's a lot of people who just can't get past non-traditionalisms of bands. But
most of them probably don't listen to our podcast. I would say most people listen to this are probably pretty open-minded. I hope.
So if you don't like the vocals on Storm My Ride, you might as well shut this episode off, because
you might be disappointed
keeps
in
going
a lot
that way.
Of things. So now Demonaz has his own vocal approach that we'll get into later in the show.
It's similar though.
Yeah, it's similar, but it's more, I guess, traditionally black metal.
It's more Quorthon-ish for sure.
There you go. But so we've got a nice healthy set, and each of these songs coming up from Between the Two Worlds kind of has its own unique personality. And I'll kind of give my thoughts on some of these songs, and feel free to sort of jump in. But I already mentioned Battalions. Very anthemic, kind of Amon Amarth-esque. It's very mid-pace, which is good.
I guess there is a lot of Amon Amarth-isms as far as the pace and tone.
Takes all of their cues from Bathory, and so I guess for me,
and Unleashed.
Yeah, and
don't forget that. Unleashed they get fucking butt fucked by these guys constantly. Yeah. Nobody ever says, "Hey, what about Unleashed?" Like, okay, it goes right from Bathory to Amon Amarth. Unleashed were the original Viking death metal band. Yeah. They have a song called fucking Viking death metal, for God's sake, which is fantastic.
And we're big fans of Unleashed here. Have
we ever done an Unleashed show?
No, we've talked about it.
We certainly should, because the last record is great.
Yeah,
the last 5 records.
Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil trembles.
Yeah,
the tree there from whatever. I was going to say Middle Earth, but that's
Enslaved gets thrown in there too. as part of the Viking metal equation and stuff like that.
They're more like the professors of Viking metal.
That's true. Yeah, they've sort of grown so beyond it now.
Amon Amarth had the Manowar covers, basically.
Yeah, that kind of worked.
Guys with mustaches and hammers. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt your train.
Well, no, but I think one thing to sort of mention is King of Hell. Some of the drifting bass playing that he does, like on this song and Far Beyond the Quiet, it's nice. Like it's
something we don't usually hear in black metal.
Yeah,
and like his stuff with Gorgoroth, at least. Like you don't bass is there to fill up space.
He's in Sog, right?
Yeah, he's in Sog.
Yeah, and the stuff he does in Sog.
Or he was in Sog. I don't know if he still is, but he was on the first record at least.
Yeah. So, so those are some kind of things that sort of jump out. And really, this song to me just recalls like In My Kingdom Cold or One by One from Sons of Northern Darkness. It just kind of has that like repetitive but like really momentous feel to it. But it's still kind of mid-pace. It's not super in your face.
Yeah, because the riffing, which I think goes back to the last couple of Immortals before this too, was that weird. There's fast riffing, but it was in little spurts.
Yes.
And then you've got it's almost like a slow riff, but played with like a weird fast picking style occasionally, like intermittently kind of thing. You'll know what I'm talking about when you hear
exactly.
The song.
It's just totally there. And then we got Mountains, which this has got some of the best, I think, guitar atmospherics, on the whole record. Mountains of ice torment my sight. Just some really great things. And I think Icedale plays some of maybe his best sort of bluesy lead solos. Real refreshing. And it's cool. Like, to me, this is a song where when I heard Mountains, when it gets to this point in the record for the first time, this was what really separated the band as its own unique thing from Immortal.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like, I could argue that some of the songs in the opening part of this record, the first 4 songs, have a lot of Immortal isms here and there mixed in, you know, but like, to me, when I heard Mountains, I was like, wow, this is its own, you know, its own entity, you know, especially in Mountains when the solo breaks out and there's this sort of like great scream that kind of happens and then guitar melodies sort of meld in. To me, it's one of the highlights of the whole record, is in this song. Probably might be my favorite song on the record, actually. I don't know if you have a particular favorite from I or not, but...
Well, the thing at which if anybody, you can take a drink, but this is what I usually say in a lot of these things. I like to listen to albums in their entirety. These are 2 albums, March of the Norse and Between Two Worlds, I think, are 2 albums that should be listened to in their entirety.
They're pretty thematic, yeah.
And it was difficult to kind of just pull out certain songs. Like, they definitely, it's almost like the classical kind of mode of, you know, we've got this one theme, but then we have different movements throughout the whole record kind of deal. But
yeah, and I'm more of I can do that, obviously, but I also have the singles mentality because
you got that radio station,
the DJ thing.
You still got CDs occasionally. We'll pull out. They'll have little pieces of paper with numbers that say
track numbers,
track 3, 4, and 7 on it. Yeah,
and I'm a mixed CD guy too. So like I'm just very much you know, like, I know song titles because of that, because I had to know them, you know,
because it's my constant backdrop throughout the day
to just play one. Yeah, the album.
I can play like the new Paradise Lost record. I think I played 12 times the first day I got it.
Yeah.
And, you know, your music listening is a little bit more focused.
Well, and it has to be because I have, like, such sparse time. You know, it's like, I get, like, 4 songs in the car if I'm driving to work or driving home, or, like,
it's my constant
couple
companion.
songs in the morning for the kids start to pour in, you know. Although sometimes I snuck some Catatonia Sounds of Decay in the other day. Kids were, like, in my room, and I just didn't care. I was like, yeah, you're just gonna have to deal with this for a few minutes.
I was fucking American.
I was in the mood, you know. So then we go from Mountains to Far Beyond the Quiet, which is the epic, the longest song on the record, over 7 minutes, and this is kind of a tribute to Quorthon himself. From what I've read, you know, it's kind of like in honor of him having just passed away.
Yeah.
You know,
really, I think these 2 records are better than a lot of the Viking metal that Quorthon did. I'm not really a huge fan of that era.
Sure.
I like some of the music, but vocally, I was never really behind it. Bloodfire Death's the last, like, I think, truly great Bathory record.
I like Hammerheart. I don't love it, but I like Hammerheart. Twilight of the Gods and Blood on Ice. Like, I've heard Blood on Ice was okay.
I enjoyed it when it came out because I got to interview Quorthon.
Yeah,
that was the once and only time I got to interview the guy, and he was incredibly, you know, really, really good dude, and I was kind of stoked that, okay, there hasn't been a Bathory record out in a long time. This is kind of a comeback.
Sure.
This was older material that was coming back, you know, kind of reinterpreting or something. But
I wonder if we went and like spent some time with those records again, you know, if we'd feel differently, kind of having now gone through
those records are ones that I actually like. The Jubileum Volume 2 versions, because they actually like that's a set of albums that actually like singles off and not the full records. Because there's some songs on there that are great, but as albums in whole, it's not. I don't listen to them in their entirety.
Okay. And I haven't really spent much time with Twilight of the Gods. I know the guys in Catatonia are really big on that record, which
I'll go back.
I almost need to like listen to it if you know Anders and Jonas are like way into.
I've got Hammerheart, but I don't own Twilight of the Gods anymore.
Yeah, me neither. The Hammerheart's the last one I own. So,
yeah,
but
I've got some of it on the second Jubileum, but I'll give it a whirl again.
Yeah,
and there's the dudes from Primordial and a couple other bands that are putting together that. There's a Bathory tribute band where they do everything just from that era.
And probably vocally, if it's
kind of better.
Yeah, that's I can gel with that. But and then from Far Beyond the Quiet, you know, which is probably one of the more mellower tunes on the record because it's open, kind of like some of the Immortal epic songs where they're more open and stuff. We get to probably the fastest and thrashiest song on the record, which is "Curse We Are," which ends the record. Unless you have the Digipack bonus tracks.
I don't have a couple. There's like 2 bonus tracks and then another like a demo version or something.
But we're sticking to the original here.
Yeah.
But yeah, Curse We Are is great. It's cool flurry of solos and stuff like that in the middle. Very kind of like you said before, Man of War. I said Blind Guardian. You know, just sort of that like
tomato,
speed metal kind of thing. You know. It's great, and there's some cool palm muting in the pre-chorus, which is awesome, and it's cool. It's a good propulsive song to sort of end the record and end our little set here.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts on Between Two Worlds?
Between Two Worlds, we are.
There we go.
So that's all I got.
So we got Battalions, Mountains, Far Beyond the Quiet, and Curse We Are. Enjoy.
Platforms built by wind, mountains of ice come in my sight. Platforms built for kings.
Curse We Are, Far Beyond the Quiet Mountains Battalions from Between Two Worlds from the I record. And we move from, we're quick here, move from one Immortal side project of the Occulta brothers to another. And
March of the Norse, dude, from 2011.
Yeah, this was on the year end.
Yeah, I threw it on the year end. It didn't get a lot of love.
Whereas the I record did. I felt like that got a lot of positive press when it came out.
I think people were...
Maybe because they were missing Immortal.
They were Immortal hungry, and Immortal's back bigger than ever right now, really. I mean, after All Shall Fall, was that 2009 that came out?
2009 or 2010. I think 2009.
But, the kind of comeback record after being gone for, what, like 7 years or something?
02 was Sons of Northern Darkness.
So. Yeah, so it was definitely a while. But, and this record is, it was mentioned earlier, is a little more subtle in approach. And I think with a lot of the glut of things that are coming out, people are just like, well, fuck, everybody and their grandma's got a goddamn record coming out.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that this actually shares, 2/3 of the members of I with Demonaz. We've got Armageddon on drums.
Yep.
You've got Ice Steel on guitar and bass.
Yep.
And then Demonaz is doing vocals and wrote the majority of the music, but then Ice Steel actually he's accredited as being an arranger. Well, and he's also a co-producer along with
on the I record too.
Yeah,
Ice Steel was.
What the fuck's the guy's name again? Verbrand Larson from the keyboard player from Enslaved.
Yeah,
has actually worked on both of those records in some capacity.
It's an interesting little family we have here.
It's very. I think the Enslaved guys are like Bergen area. Mm-hmm. And then I think the Immortal guys are just outside of that in some tiny fucking little crazy burg where they just hang around, walk around on glaciers and with their notepads and write lyrics. But yeah, March of the Norse is much more, they almost take 3 different riffs throughout the whole record and slightly morph them throughout the whole thing.
It's almost like, and you were talking that the approach that Abath and some of them have to songwriting was kind of like out of a jazz, kind of like a modal theme or something like that. If you the first time you hear, like, say, Miles Davis Kind of Blue, there's something consistent about the whole record where, like, I could play you a song and you would know it came from that record. Yeah. You might not know what song it is, and it doesn't really matter, but you would just know it fits with that theme of that record.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like when you hear, like even the Between Two Worlds, but even more so on March of the Norse, every song is almost like not insignificant, but like doesn't really like stand out from one another that much. I mean, there's like little moments, or there's parts of like solos that you like better, or like little acoustic passages that kind of chat about. But as a whole, it's like thematic. It's like, it's all pretty mid-pace. It's got a lot of like new wave of British heavy metal melodicisms, along with a heavy dose of Bathory. More pronounced Bathory consistently throughout. It's like
there's lots of Hammerheart and Twilight of the Gods in this thing for sure. But almost too, it's and not like like they're necessarily aping it. Which I don't know if there's ever been a band that's really just completely ripped that off. Yeah. Like everybody seems to translate it a little bit at least. But this album reminds me of like it's another side of Immortal, of that whole kind of mythos. They don't talk about the Blashyrkh mythos or anything, but just that, like when I'm listening to this thing, basically that and I is like running across the glaciers. March of the Norse is, as the title insinuates, is it's a slower pace thing.
Like contemplating.
It's like you're walking across these vast wastelands of winter, and there's just this bleakness.
Although there is sort of a battle, it maybe not, it's not as immediately battle ready as maybe the I record is, but then when you get into like a song like a Son of the Sword or things like that,
some of it's almost like contemplative, like, okay, we fought the battle. Yeah. Now we're walking on to the next conquer the next village or whatever it might be.
Sure.
That kind of thing. Like, because there is some triumphantness to this, which I don't want to say this thing's just all bleak and
because
whatever. It's not at all.
It's very listenable. I don't know. It's like it's not a
easy listening black metal or whatever. I don't even know what genre to throw this in.
Well, I think like you said, the sameness probably what led to, I think, a lot of people thinking maybe it was underwhelming. Maybe it wasn't as dynamic.
If you're the kind of person that when you get a new CD, if you like to skip around, you're going to hear a lot of the same riffs.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of blogs and magazines are guilty of not listening to records more than a couple times before they review them.
Yeah.
And there's something that I probably listened to this thing when 2 times ago when I was driving down to Kentucky. I listened to this almost the whole way down.
Oh, wow.
And just because I had my iPod set to where it repeated the record, and I was just like, I want to keep listening to this. It wasn't so I listened to it, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times in a row or something. But it almost felt like it's just like this journey record, a document of a journey, kind of thing, of an experience. So there's a lot of records that are like this. They're really subtle. They don't jump out. They don't have singles. They don't break new boundaries. But there's a lot of riffs, and the guitar playing I think on this record is fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's subtle, but it's fucking great. But there's a lot of records where there's just that kind of undefinable thing that you identify with on a record that just like, I want to keep listening to this over and over and over again.
Yeah. No, I think it has it. It's definitely kind of has like an it factor to it. And
although I still don't own a real version of it.
Yeah. I just bought it on Amazon today for like $5.
I couldn't find it on fucking record outside of $40. And I was like, God damn it. I've got the promo still, but
yeah.
Sorry, Demonaz.
Mark's weighed down.
Me and my goddamn vinyl ethics.
Yeah. So I just need the plastic case.
I will gladly accept a free CD, but I do not buy them anymore. I just got the Go For on CD. I didn't pay for it, but I got it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. There's like, it's hard to like break these songs down. Maybe.
I mean, Over the Mountains is an interesting vocal, which we'll be hearing here soon. Is an interesting vocal exercise where it's the Abath approach to vocals, but he's actually holding out notes in more of like a harmonious way, which you don't often hear in this kind of stuff.
And the other thing too, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've totally forgot. The other thing that you hear on this record that you haven't really heard before, not on much Immortal stuff that I can kind of really think of, but there's a choral aspect to some of the vocals.
Even with
some keyboard things.
The Between Two Worlds song. Abath's actually between two worlds I am, like he's actually holding notes out in that kind of weird register, which never happened before.
But this Immortal record is like there's like a chorus of voices on some of these songs, you know, which like you haven't heard anybody in the Immortal camp do something like that before, you know.
Yeah.
And that adds more of a, I guess, the epic quality. But yeah, you're right, you know, holding out the notes and things like that. I mean, Under the Great Fires links a lot of things too. Like, I mean, all these songs are kind of linked together, but that's got that great like acoustic kind of like ending that then like just slowly like kind of brings everything down, and then it kind of re-kicks in with like Over the Mountains. Yeah, you know, and it works. It sort of ebbs and flows with like, it's like classical music or something. And Bathory and a lot of black metal is influenced by.
It's very Wagner, Anglo,
and, you know, exactly. You know, North.
But the interesting thing, even though that the Ben Ash video that we talked about earlier, he mentioned some of the chord choices and stuff that Immortal uses are like jazz chord progressions. Yeah. But it's funny that there's the kind of jazz chord progression thing mixed with this very Anglo classical kind of white music.
Yes.
You know, they kind of, and I don't know if that's like the more improvisational aspect or even more novice aspect of, just because these guys they're not classically trained players. They're playing from their gut, and I think it shows, and that's why I think I'm drawn to a lot of this stuff. Yeah. But having those two things, but then yet being in Norway, which is a very white, very affluent country, I wonder if just those two things together kind of like pop. That's why Immortal's always popped out to me as being a band that they never really fit in the scene. Mm-hmm. But they've gotten an immense amount of respect, and now they're at this level where who does not know who Immortal is? Yeah. Who doesn't send out some stupid thing on Facebook that of Demonaz or Abath walking through a metal detector or riding a surfboard, or like they're pop culture icons at this point.
They're on Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Abath is on Guitar Hero. You know what I mean? So it's strange, you know. Didn't they use? No, I'm trying to think. They use his likeness, like there's like people post like Facebook pictures of like cats that look like Abath.
Yeah. I mean, there's all this kind of crap.
It's all pretty.
So they've been. It's fun because I still think of these guys as like, the pure Holocaust record. Like nobody gave a shit about them.
Yeah.
I still kind of see them at that point. They still kind of hold that same reverence to me. But
yeah, that's kind of the way I see. Like I'll still always think of Opeth as like Orchid Morning Rise.
Yeah.
That nobody knew about him.
I wish Michael had never ground that mustache.
Yeah, damn fucking shit stash really took him in a weird egotistical place. So, but so let's hear what this is all about. These 4 songs actually that we're gonna play all kind of connect to each other in terms of the sequence if you buy the album. So you can capture the Mark listening experience of listening to songs consecutively, not in a single.
Well, and we're actually going to, the one that's not written on here is Northern Hymn, which will be on there.
I decided to
play things up a little bit.
The 4 in a row that all connect to each other, and we'll end with the disconnected song. So we've got A Son of the Sword, Where Gods Once Rode, Under the Great Fires, and Over the Mountains. Enjoy.
I rose
Over the mountains, under the great fires, where gods once rode, and a son of the sword.
To grandmother's house we go.
Yes. And we're going to close things out with the aforementioned stuff that Mark was talking about, which is Northern Hymn and All Black in Sky. And Northern Hymn is the sort of choral intro that opens up the Demonaz record.
Which is probably the most Bathory-ish part of the whole thing.
Odin's Ride Over Nordland is what I wrote down. It's kind of what it's, sort of
minus the crackling fire, and you got it. Yeah.
But, and then All Black in Sky, to me, it's maybe the most triumphant song on the record. It's
that, and just the riff. I'm fucking air guitaring to that, even though it's not like a drop to your knees, November Rain kind of solo thing. But it's just, I don't know, it's so fucking catchy, and just something about it just really connects with me.
Well, there's definitely there's some Iron Maidenisms. Yeah. Within the new wave of British heavy metal that's sort of pronounced throughout this record. So.
Well, and hearing that the kind of Immortal approach to songwriting with more major chords and more triumphant sounds instead of the kind of more bleakish things that we hear on like All Shall Fall or something. But it's a really pretty interesting song.
Yeah. So this was sort of a left to center thing that we wanted to do. There's there's no really way to do an entire show just on one of these two records, but they almost do kind of
could have padded it out, but
strangely
it makes sense,
fit together, in a way. They're part of the canon of Immortal, but yet they're kind of unique, and they almost sort of fit together as like I Part 1, and Demonaz almost is like I Part 2, and it has some sensibilities, but it's still its own unique kind of thing. I think.
March of the Norse almost seems like intermission between the last Immortal record and the next Immortal record.
Yeah, and just
like the calm before the storm kind of thing.
To Sons of the Northern Darkness. Yeah, this March of the Norse connects to All Shall Fall. All Shall Fall. Yeah. So for some reason I always think All Shall Pass. I think of like Gandalf. Like I don't know.
What, the George Harrison record?
Yeah, that must be. Yeah.
I always think of the Axe to Fall, because Axe to Fall and All Shall Fall
Converge.
came out the same year.
2009 as well.
Yeah,
that's weird. Weird.
All Things Must Pass was George Harrison.
All Things Must Pass, yeah.
All Things Must Fall will be his next posthumous record.
Yeah. Sad. I lost my train of thought on that one. It's too late, for sure. But let us know what you thought. Most people probably know the I record. Well, I assume that, but maybe not. You might be pleasantly surprised.
It's difficult. If you don't know what the title of the record is, it's difficult putting in I in Google and trying to find anything.
But Between Two Worlds.
And I've still never heard what the fuck that means. I assumed that it would be that, okay, if you're looking through the I section in metal, that it would be I and then Immortal. And then, what's this?
These are connected.
And it's just a cover with a metallic I on it. Letter I, not like a eyeball.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm sure it does stand for something at a certain point. We have to ask Demonaz, because he writes these lyrics. He probably has some concept behind some of what he's doing. But and then of course I think the underrated and kind of under the radar March of the Norse from last year. A lot of people I don't think got a hold of that. I know I was a latecomer to hearing it. I knew it was out, but then I think you initially, or maybe Chris, were kind of like, it's all right. But then that
was one thing we kind of talked about a lot. It was like at first I was like, it's all right, it's boring. But then me and Chris talked about it quite a bit. Chris Dick, who's been on the show quite a few times, and we're just like, it's subtle, but this guitar playing is just great. Yeah, not everything needs to be flourished and fucking spastic and crazy.
And I think that's a nice thing. The linkage between these two is what Icedale sort of brings to the table. It's kind of just classiness, really, and he's not having to flash it up.
No shirts required.
No shirts required. Yeah, he's classy with no shirt on. The only way to be classy.
That's right.
Hopefully no shoes.
If I had those pecs, I wouldn't wear a shirt either.
That's true. That's true. You gotta start lifting weights. So let us know what you thought. Shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com, or check us out on Facebook, Mark and Jason, on iTunes. Leave us a comment. If you'd like to become an executive producer, we could definitely
we can greatly appreciate it this time of season. This is the renewal of the domains, so if you'd like to be a son of Blashyrkh, please send us some money.
Mighty Ravenclaw. Anyways, and if you would like to get in contact, or if you do want to donate, requiempodcast.com.
Yes.
there's the website. You can get some artwork up there. You can get some T-shirts, coffee mugs, all kinds of good stuff, or become an executive producer, which is
that's true. Or here's a treat for you. If you like Merciful Fate,
oh yeah,
go to cvcomics.com, and on the left, or actually it'll be the main thing on the page. Look to see what I'm doing with a bunch of other great artists about Merciful Fate. It is a tribute to one of the best bands in heavy metal.
Yep, and obviously a guy that had an influence over this scene as well.
I think, yeah, arguably probably one of the most important, especially even if you didn't like if you weren't influenced by his music, you were influenced by his theatrics.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, when we talked about, like, the drumming of Mickey D kind of being like Armageddon.
There you go.
This sort of propulsive, sort of not flashy, but just propulsive. Definitely.
Kim Bendix Peterson, one of the best guys ever.
There you go. So, all right. Well, for Requiem Metal Podcast, Demonaz and I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.